I'm delighted to have been asked to do this wrap-up piece. Uh, First of all, I just want to congratulate National Rural Network on what has been a really successful event. I've had the opportunity to listen in to a good deal of the discussion, and as has just been touched on, I mean, just the range of issues and ideas and comments that have come through, not just in the discussion but in the chat, is just so vast. It wouldn't be possible for me in my, as you described them, few moments more to do justice to all of that. But I would like to pick up on a few things, just in making some closing comments. Uh, First of all, just to say, I mean, today is actually a really valuable opportunity, I think, to reflect back on 30 years of Leader and to celebrate and to acknowledge the achievements over that time, but also to think about those features of the program that have been key to its success, and to think about, in doing that, what we need to protect and sustain and what we can build on in helping to address the new and evolved challenges that lie ahead for rural Ireland. So in celebrating and acknowledging the contribution of Leader to Irish life over the past 30 years, I was very struck actually by Professor Mark Schucksmith's comment earlier on today that Ireland led the way in the early development of Leader. And Maura, you yourself, I think, name checked some of those early pioneers earlier on this morning. And it's great to be able to pay tribute to those contributions and the contributions of everybody who has built on those over the past 30 years. And in doing that, I think I should congratulate all of the local action groups, and their implementing partners for all of the work that has gone into engaging with communities and delivering projects, that have made such a difference to rural Ireland over the course of that 30 years. I don't know if anyone has a figure for the total value of investments or the total value of projects supported over the past 30 years, but there's no doubt that the impact has been felt far and wide. And any of us who have been, I suppose, rediscovering Ireland over the past couple of years can't help but be struck by the number of Leader-funded signs that we encounter on our travels, and by the number and the variety of developments that we see around the place. Not to mention the hugely important supports that have been provided to enterprises, which might be less visible, as we engage and travel across Ireland. And actually, I think James mentioned earlier this morning the case studies booklet that was compiled by NRN and published on Friday, which brings a lot of that to life, just in terms of the last programme. It really is an uplifting publication full of very inspiring stories that capture the impacts and benefits that have been felt in so many ways for communities right across the country, for enterprise, for the rural economy, and for the rural environment. So look, we've been in the fortunate position, in recent years, of being able to widen and expand funding opportunities for rural development through programs like the Town and Village Renewal Scheme, the Outdoor Recreation Infrastructure Scheme, and of course the Rural Regeneration and Development Programme, all of which have greatly enhanced the opportunities for communities to give life to their own vision and their ideas for future development. And um, Brian, in the discussion that's just finished, referred to that wider ecosystem of which Leader forms part, and it is important to draw attention to that, because there are now record levels of funding for rural development available at a community level through Leader and through other programs of support. And as part of that, Leader is going to continue to be a massively important foundational program. A lot of the discussion this morning keeps coming back to that point around Leaders' capacity building role. It has been a great enabler for communities and will continue to be a great enabler for communities. It builds that capacity within communities. It helps to bring people together within communities, providing a means for them to develop their own ideas, to improve their quality of life, to serve as a bit of a stepping stone potentially over time for other opportunities for development to be accessed. So really, Leader helps those local community organizations to get out of the starting blocks, to bring their ideas together, to to achieve that collaboration and involvement at a local community level, fueled, I suppose, by the possibility that, you know, it's not going to be a talking shop. There is a means, there is a vehicle to give life to the ideas that are put forward. I think, Maura, you've described it before as the social capital benefits of leader, and I think that's a really, really important dimension of it. It's come through again and again in the discussion this morning, and it's something that we really need to protect and sustain, as a vital means of supporting communities across rural Ireland. So I suppose a lot of the discussion that I've picked up on anyway over the course of today has really been about the value of the leader approach. And as we look to the future and the next leader program, it's going to be really important to remind ourselves of those key elements, and the value of that leader approach, the bottom up local community involvement that's been so central to the success of leader, that local community involvement in the development of local development strategies, the flexibility that leader offers in terms of funding opportunities, and the importance of the broad-based teams have been part and parcel of the approach, enabling the widest variety of enterprise, economic job creation, social inclusion, environmental projects to be delivered, supporting local community and local enterprise opportunities, and building community resilience, helping rural communities ultimately to help themselves. And I suppose in referencing the local action groups and the implementing partners, you know, the project officers, rural development officers on the ground are so important across all of the local development companies. That animation role that has been talked about. I think there were references there to the importance of learning and networking as part of the leader approach. Our commission speaker, Iwona, referenced it earlier, and I think it was picked up on again there in the discussion that's just concluded. And that is a really important part of it, sharing learning and ideas across communities and indeed across international boundaries, allowing communities to be inspired by the success of others and helping them to generate their own ideas for development. So look, I mean, that approach to leader and its value is why maintaining and sustaining leader activity on the ground is so important. And the minister talked earlier this morning about the transition program and how that is allowing us to sustain leader activity on a continuous basis at existing levels and avoid the kind of funding gaps that materialized in the past, because it is really important that we do sustain that vital capacity building and our capacity for capacity building and animation as we transition from one program to another. And I think that point has been emphasized many times in the discussion this morning, but just to say it's a point that's very well understood. And it's also important, I think, to point out that one of the priorities of the transitional program that's now in place is to place a particular emphasis on supports and capacity building for communities that haven't previously received assistance either under LEADER or other rural development programs. So using that transitional program for the LAGs and the implementing partners to engage directly with new applicants and prospective applicants, helping them to develop their ideas and promoting local collaboration to support those ideas. So again, it's to re-emphasize that capacity building piece is such an important part of what we see as being the fundamental importance of leader and the leader approach as part of that wider funding and support ecosystem for rural development. And in developing the new leader program, it's the intention to build on the inputs and the ideas of everyone. You know, there's been a lot of suggestions and ideas put forward in the discussion and in the chat today. We want to continue to harvest those ideas. There is a current review which has involved extensive stakeholder engagement and which will feed into the development and design of the new program. In that new program, the aim is very much to continue to draw and build on the strengths of the program over the past 30 years and all of those elements that people have emphasized in the discussion right across the contributions here today. You know, we want to identify where and how we can be more effective in delivery. And again, there have been references to elements of that in the course of the discussion this morning, and all ideas and contributions on that are always welcome. There have been previous actions to address elements of previous concerns that were surfaced on that front, and there's always an openness to engaging on what the possibilities and opportunities for doing things better look like. And I did like that comment from Michael Kenny about it taking a genius to simplify things. Anyone can complicate them, but hopefully there are a few geniuses that can offer good directions for development and change on that front. So look, I mean, the challenge is, I think, in developing the next program, is to ensure that the kind of impact that's been achieved over the past 30 years of Leader can be replicated as we face into the new challenges and opportunities for rural Ireland in the current context. And of course, the Minister talked about our rural future, um, which was launched earlier this year as a whole of government 5-year strategy for the sustainable development of rural Ireland over the period to come. Leader as a programme is going to be a really important part of delivering on that strategy. The aim is that as we move beyond the stresses of the pandemic, that we're in a position to seize new opportunities for rural Ireland, for sustainable and inclusive development, for taking advantage of digital connectivity, for ensuring that the opportunities that are there as part of the transition to a carbon neutral future are opportunities for rural Ireland, and to identify, the new possibilities and the new opportunities that are there for everybody in rural Ireland. And our rural future is really a policy framework that is aimed at supporting rural communities in trying to take advantage of what we see as real opportunity and a real time of opportunity for rural development. So look, it's also important to emphasise that the approach to implementing our rural future is a deliberately dynamic one, because there has been some, again, commentary around consultation and involvement in terms of what our rural future looks like in the course of the discussion this morning. So, in implementing our rural future, the approach is to develop annual work programs which can adapt to changing needs and priorities. And, we're deliberately in the implementation approach running a series of rural ideas fora, which are running at the moment, and people can see details of those on the gov.ie website, because we want to keep the conversation active on ideas for the future of rural Ireland and how we make those happen. As I say, through a dynamic approach to implementing our rural future, of which the Leader programme will be an important part. And just picking up on the commentary in relation to the youth voice and the involvement of younger people in that, one of the particular initiatives as part of that implementation approach is the establishment of a rural youth assembly, which meets for the first time tomorrow, actually. So again, if anybody wants to participate in that, or knows of anybody who wants to participate, you'll find the details on gov.ie. And just, it's also important to emphasise that our rural future is part of a wider policy framework that we as a department have been putting in place to support communities and to support community activity. So we have a 5-year strategy to support the community and voluntary sector. We have a national volunteering strategy, which reflects the importance of volunteering and volunteers, another point that I picked up on the discussion in the discussion earlier. And we have a national social enterprise policy, which reflects the importance of social innovation and social enterprise at community level. So I think a common thread that runs through all of those is the challenge of building capacity at community level, helping communities to develop their vision of their future, and helping those communities to bring that vision and the ideas behind it to life. And Leader is going to continue to be absolutely fundamental to enabling communities to avail of all of those opportunities. And we do keep coming back to that phrase, I think, of capacity building. And I liked a related phrase that came up in the chat this morning, of confidence building, because ultimately we are about trying to build confidence within our communities, build confidence in the future of rural Ireland, and we're all going to have a part to play in making that happen. And as has been the case over the past 30 years, I think Leader will continue to be a massively important vehicle in making that happen over the coming years. So look, I mean, it's been a really rich discussion over the course of the morning. I just want to thank everybody who's contributed to that. Maura, to you in particular, for your chairing of the conference this morning, and to James and everybody else at NRN who have been responsible for making it such a success. Want to thank our speakers, particularly our keynote speakers, Professor Mark Schuch-Smith of Newcastle University and Iwona Listswan from the EU Commission, who I think made really valuable contributions in sort of setting the scene for the conference this morning, and of course the Minister as well, all of the panelists who've contributed so well to the discussion, and everybody else who participated.